Good morning, dear students. My name is Miss MAARIYA AHMAD WASEEM from Little Angels High School, Gwalior. Welcome to our online session. Hope you all have revised the previous portion of this lesson carefully. Now, in this session, we will be discussing about asexual reproduction, which is also known as vegetative reproduction. Now, in the case of plants, asexual reproduction is known as vegetative reproduction. Now, what exactly is vegetative reproduction? Let's see. So, in vegetative reproduction, only one plant is involved, and the new plant that is produced is a result of only one parent. And the new plant is exactly identical to the parent. Now, this is one of the most important characteristic of asexual reproduction, that the offspring that is produced is always exactly identical to the parent. While in the case of sexual reproduction, which we will be discussing later on, we will see that the offspring that is produced is not identical to the parent. As you can see for yourself, you are not exactly identical to either your mother or your father. But in the case of vegetative or asexual reproduction, the offspring that is produced is always exactly identical to the parent. Now, vegetative reproduction can be categorized into two ways. First is natural reproduction and the other is artificial reproduction. Now, natural reproduction can take place by the help of three methods. First, by the help of roots, second, by the help of stems, and third, by the help of leaves. And artificial reproduction can take place by the help of again three methods. By the help of stem cutting, second, by the help of layering, and lastly, by the help of grafting. Now we will be getting into detail about these things. Now, what exactly is natural vegetative reproduction? As the name itself suggests, that a new plant will be grown naturally and there will be no external interference or any kind of human interference. The plant will be grown naturally. So, the first method by which a plant can be grown is by the help of roots. Now, the root of the plant gives rise to a new plant. The example of this method is sweet potato. You can look into the figure and see that there is new shoot which is arising from the bud, and also there are bud present on the root tuber which will later give rise to a new plant. So we can see that a sweet potato will give rise to a new plant. And you can see that the root itself is swollen. Now, why is it swollen? It is swollen because it has reserved food material stored in itself so that it can be used in the future. Now, the second method by which a new plant can be grown is by the help of stem. Now, you know that stem has nodes. Yes? So, some plants bear tiny buds at their nodes, and each of these buds are capable of giving rise to a new plant. The examples are sugarcane, potato, and ginger. Now, there is one very huge misconception that potato is a root. No, a potato is a stem, and you know what? You can say that it is an underground stem. So you can see at the surface of the potato that from the nodes a new shoot is coming up, and later on it will give rise to a new plant. And in the same way, if you see ginger, you can see buds growing into new shoots. And lastly, if you see sugarcane, you can see at the node a new plant is growing itself on the stem itself. Now, the last method by which a new plant can be grown is by the help of leaves. Now, this is very interesting, that how can a leaf give rise to a new plant. So there is this one plant known as bryophyllum, and on the leaf it has margins, and on the margins buds are present. Okay, now these buds give rise to new plant. What happens that when the leaf gets detached from the parent plant and reaches the soil, these buds then grow into new plants, and thus a new plant is formed. Now, these were the three methods by which natural vegetative reproduction could take place. Now, we will be discussing about artificial vegetative reproduction. Now, as the name itself suggests that a new plant is grown artificially, there is intervention of humans, and the new plant is not grown on its own, and it is carried out by humans in fields and in labs. So the first method by which this kind of reproduction can take place is by the help of stem cutting. So what happens in this method, we take a plant and then we cut a small piece of that plant, and that small piece is then planted into the soil, and after some days you can see that the cutting that we had planted earlier is growing into a new plant. Now we can see this method in sugarcane and rose. Now you can see from the figure itself that, for example, in the case of rose, you have cut a small piece from the parent plant, and then you have planted that into the soil, and after few days you will observe that a new plant is growing from that cutting. Now the second method by which this artificial vegetative reproduction can take place is by the help of layering. Now what happens, please look into the figure so that you can understand it in a better way, that there is one parent plant, and you can see on the left hand side and on the right hand side, on the lower branches, what we do, we take lower branches of the parent plant and we bend it and bury it under the soil. But one important thing, that the tip is kept above the soil. Now after few days, what you will observe, that a new plant is developing. So what we do after few days, we cut that part from the parent plant, and we can then easily transfer that new plant to a different place. Now this method we can imply in the case of jasmine. Now the last way in which this artificial reproduction can take place is by the help of grafting. Now this is very interesting method. In this method, we take two different plants and we join them and tie them with the help of wet cloth. The upper part of the plant is known as scion, and this is actually the desired plant that we want. And the lower part is known as the stalk. You can see from the figure itself that we have taken two different plants and we have joined them by the help of, or wrapped it by the help of, a wet cloth, and now this plant is our new plant. Now in this session we have discussed all about asexual reproduction. In the upcoming videos we will be discussing about sexual reproduction, pollination, seed germination, and more interesting topics. Thank you.